Okay, quiet. So this is everything to the left. Quiet. So x is going to the left, so it's less than. It's filled in, so it's also equal to 8. X is greater than, but not equal to, negative 12. So those should be easy, as long as you know what it means to write the inequality. So now on these are like what we've done for most of our assignments, where you got to solve it. So here's the inequality, and then graph the solution. So remember, you solve these exactly like equations. You got to get the letter by itself. So since it's a -7, I add 7. Do the same to the other side. Drop the sign down, and you're done. That's a one step. So on our graph, just put 3 numbers. It's hollow because it's not equal to, and x is less than 11, so it's to the left of 11. Here, to get the t by itself, I got to get rid of the +4, so I -4. Do the same to the other side, and we get 12 is greater than or equal to t. So put 11, 12, and 13 on there. It's filled in because it has the equal. Now this one is backwards. The t is on the right. So if t is less than, so that means it's to the left of 12, if you read it backwards. Read the letter first. Less than goes left, right, greater goes right. This one we just have to divide by 5, and you get y is less than or equal to 4. So that's a filled in circle. Y is less than, so it's to the left. It's m divided by 3, so we multiply by 3. Do the same to the other side. M is greater than -18. So now remember, you do have to change the direction of the sign. If you multiply by a negative, we're not multiplying by a negative, even though that number is. It's the number you're getting rid of. If that's negative, then you change the direction. So now when you put your negative numbers on, remember they got to go backwards. So this is hollow. M is greater than, so it's to the right. When it's a fraction times the letter, you could just divide by a half. That's fine. The easier way is take it times the reciprocal, 2 over 1. So take that times 2 over 1 and you get 12. So that's hollow at 12. N is greater, so it's to the right. This is one of these where it's times, so you divide by a negative. So when you divide by negative, you have to switch the direction of the sign.
Can our attention please? Will varsity softball please report to the gym at this time? Varsity softball please report to the gym at this time, along with Bailey Burcham, Abby Lundy, Katrina Jackson, Joey Carlson, Doug Jackson, and Remy Goodwin. Thank you.
Okay. So remember on your negatives, put it backwards, -2, -3, -4. Filled in circle, M is less than, so it goes to the left. Okay, then here we have some 2-step problems. Remember, you do your add or subtract first. It's a minus, so we add 21. 28, drop the sign down, 4p. Then divide by 4, and you get p is greater than or equal to 7. So that'd be a filled in circle at 7. P is greater, so it goes to the right. Here, if you notice, there's a negative in front of the 5 times the x. So you're going to end up switching the direction of the sign. You can go through and kind of tell which ones you will. This one will have to. This one will have to. If there's a negative hook to the letter, you're going to have to switch the direction of the sign. So here, get that 4 out of there. So I'm -4. Then I got to divide by -5, which means switch the direction of the sign. So that would be hollow at -6, and this one's backwards, so read x is greater than -6, so it's to the right. This one is just a one step. I gotta divide by -8. There's just a few of these in there to see if you remember that rule. Since I divide by -8, switch the direction of the sign. So that would be filled in. Q is greater than -8, so it goes to the right. Here's the x, so get rid of the -2, you add 2. Then divide by 3. So that would be a filled in circle. X is less than, so it's to the left of 3. Now we get into some where you got to simplify a little bit. On this left side, there's two like terms, so you can combine them. A 5y plus 2y is 7y. -8, still have the -8, is greater than 6. So now it's just a two-step. Add 8. Divide by 7, and you get y is greater than 2. So that's a hollow circle at 2, y is greater than, so it goes to the right.
Wait. So you had to move? Oh, I don't know. Oh. That's confusing.
16, everyone know what the first thing you gotta do before you solve it? Multiply the 2 through. So it'd be 3 is greater than 2 times z is 2z. 2 times -3 is -6. So to get the z by itself, get rid of the -6 by adding 6. Then divide by 2, and that's 4.5, or 4.5. So you could just put 4.5 and then put 4 and 5 on each side if you wanted to. And that would be a hollow circle. Read the letter first, read it backwards. Z is less than, so it goes to the left of 4.5. Here we got m's on both sides. So you got to get them together on one side. Doesn't matter which way you move them. I would move this one over here. So remember, anytime you move something across, it changes signs. It changes from a +4m to a -4m. All you're doing is you're doing the opposite to each side. It's just a shortcut if you think it's just changing the signs. So when I move that over, that makes a total of 5 m's. Since I got the m's on the left, get the non-m's to the right. It's a -7, so I do the opposite, add 7. That makes 15. Drop the sign down. Divide by 5, and you get m is less than 3. So that's a hollow circle at 3. M is less than, so it's to the left. 18, we got to get the b by itself, so get rid of 17. Don't look at that sign, you look at in front. If I subtract 17, that makes 0. 17 minus 17. So do the same to the other side, and that is 27. And that's still a -3b. Yep, so when I divide by -3, you got to change the direction of the sign. So that's -9. So that's a filled-in circle at -9. Read it backwards. B is less than, so it's to the left of -9.
So you kind of could have just left the sign how it was, though?
Well, it ends up going the same direction. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Yeah. Since the B's on the right? Yeah. On that case, it does. Okay, so here, just like this one, you gotta multiply this through. So that's negative 6d. Now this is one you gotta get the sign right. Negative times negative is positive 66. Greater than or equal to 30. So, subtract 66. And that is negative 36. Then we gotta divide by a negative 6. So that means we gotta switch the direction of the sign. So that's a filled in circle. D is less than or equal to, it goes to the left of 6. Okay, Mark earns $3.63 a week. Pedro works for $8.25 an hour. For how many hours must Pedro work to make as much or more than Mark? How much is it?
They're in Mexico.
Oh, I don't think it's 9 in Minnesota. Isn't it like 7?
No, it's 9.
It's 9 everywhere.
This is Mexico.
I thought it was
Minimum wage in Mexico is like
$7.75.
$3.
Okay, so Pedro makes $8.25 per hour. You can use X or H or whatever.
It's gotta be New Mexico.
Minimum wage in Mexico is like 9 pesos, which
Yeah.
is actually.
They're not. They're not where they were last year. Oh. Yeah, I don't have a clue then. They never told me anything. I don't have any in my room. Okay.
I want Mark's job.
It's not over there. 44 hours.
Okay, so Pedro's wants to make as much or more. So what sign would you put? Greater than or equal to 363. So all we got to do is divide by 8.25 per hour.
44.
What is it?
44.
So he's got to work 44 hours or more.
I'm sick.
Now we get into this last worksheet we had, the compound equations.
I hate this.
Now, remember, absolute value, whether it's an equation or an inequality, has 2 answers. Okay? So anytime you see it, whether it's an equation or if it's an inequality, what you got to do is rewrite it. You got to make sure, first of all, the absolute value is by itself, which it is. So you rewrite it, you put the same sign on this side, and you put the opposite there, and then just get the x by itself in the middle. So all I got to do is subtract 4, subtract 4, subtract 4. And you get your 2 answers. Negative 14 and 6. Now, this is one where if you don't notice it, I started solving it before I realized.
What?
Can an absolute value
No.
equal a negative?
No.
No solution. Now, if you didn't notice that and you wrote it out and solved it, you would have gotten 3 and negative 3. But you just need to notice that it can equal a negative. So here, 3x minus 5 equals 11 equals negative 11. So, get the x by itself, add 5 to all of it, and then divide by 3, and we get negative 3 equals x equals, you could just leave it 16/3, that would be 5 1/3, or if you divide it out, 5.3 repeating. If you left it 16/3, that's fine too. Then the compound inequalities, you solve the same way. Get the letter by itself. So you subtract 2, subtract 2, subtract 2. And then you graph it. So remember, all you need is the 2 numbers on here. 2 and 8. It's filled in at 2. it's hollow at 8. And if you read this, this reads x is less than 8. This reads x is greater than 2, so they connect. Now, I don't know if any of you did this on your worksheet. Okay, make sure you don't, because you just got to have the lines where the solutions are, so it'd just be from there to there. 24, it's an or. So instead of writing it all together like this, they just wrote them separate. So you just solve them both and graph them both. Divide by -3, which means I have to switch the direction of the sign. Or it could be this, subtract 6. So, put -8 and 4 on here. Don't put the 4 over here and the -8 there, because it's got to be in order on the number line. They're both hollow. This says x is greater than 4. This says x is less than -8. Here, get the x by itself. So subtract 2, subtract 2, subtract 2. Then you got to divide by a -4, which means you're going to have to switch the direction of both signs. So this would be 3, switch the sign, and this would be -1. Since I divided by a negative, you got to switch the direction of the sign. So, -1 and 3 are my two answers. At the 3, it's hollow. At the -1, it's filled in. X is greater than -1, so it's to the right. Here, x is less than 3, so it's to the left, so those connect. Then the absolute value ones, you do exactly like we did the equations. You rewrite it. Put the same sign here, they gotta point the same way, and then you just put the opposite on that side. And then get the x by itself. So I just have to add 2, add 2, add 2. And you're done. So at -6 and 10, they're both filled in. X is greater than or equal to 10, so it goes to the right. X is less than -6, so it goes to the left. And then the last one, same thing, rewrite it. Put the same sign here and put the opposite there, and then get the x by itself. So add 2, add 2, add 2. Divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. You could just leave that 5/3 if you wanted to. It's 1.6 repeating if you divide it out. Either way is fine.
Negative.
Negative, right. And that's 3. So put those two numbers on the number line. They're both hollow. X is less than 3, so it's to the left. X is greater than, so it's to the right, so they connect. So this will be on iTunes U if